All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of the D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, we are going to be finishing with the dancer subclasses by looking at the exotic wonder. Now, two things. First, as a reminder, if you're enjoying this, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon to turn notifications on. All of those are really important for this being seen. That being said, Dancer has been kind of interesting because the base class itself, as written, doesn't work. It's a conglomeration of a bunch of different features that don't work together, to be blunt. It has the sneak attack from Rogue. It's got unarmored defense from Barbarian. It's got half caster spell casting, very similar to a Paladin or a Ranger. It also has a bunch of other rogue features built in, and then this crazy bewildering grace thing that effectively allows it to cast spells up to 7th level. And combine that with their spellcasting has this weird thing where whenever there are verbal components, instead of having to say them, they have to dance them, which requires them to use 10 feet of speed, movement speed to cast any spells, and additional 10 feet of speed to maintain concentration on any spells. So for a dancer, a class really defined by its movement abilities, in order to use its spell casting abilities, it actually has to reduce its movement speed possibly down to 10 feet per round. Making it the slowest class in the game by a pretty large margin. And if you're playing a short race, like a halfling or something like that, and are a dancer, then you would have 5 feet of movement per round if you cast a spell and are concentrating on a spell. So, I made some revisions, suggestions to it to make it a little bit more in line with how 5th edition class design works and make it a little bit more unique. So when I go over this subclass, the first part is going to be me talking about the subclass as it relates to the base class, simply because the revised class is so different. And the suggestions I'm going to make this work with the revised class make it so different that you can't really compare the revised subclass to the base class or the base subclass to the revised class, because they rely on too many different things that don't exist in either. So first half of the video we'll be talking about the regular one. Second half we'll be talking about the changes I think should be made in order to make it work. With the revisions I suggested. So, quick refresher on 5th edition class design. In 5e D&D, every class is designed to play very, very differently right from the beginning. In order to do that, we have these things called defining features. Defining features are things that are either unique to the class, or the other classes may get them, but this class gets them earlier or can use them in different ways than any other class. In order for something to be a defining feature, it has to show up in the first 2 levels. So, that being said, what are the defining features of the old version of the Dancer? Well, it's got quite a few, to be honest. First is Dazzling Dance. Basically, anytime they take the attack action, they build up a charge. It's called a Dazzling Dance charge, but with a stutter, that is impossible to say, so I'm just going to call it a charge. They build up a charge, and starting off, they can burn one of those charges to take the dash or disengage action as a bonus action, effectively giving the dancer the ability to use most of the rogue's cunning action, which is one of their defining features. Speaking of the rogue, their second defining feature is called Flourish, which is just sneak attack by another name. Now, the interesting thing about Flourish is because of the word choice they've chosen, the only weapons that can be used with Flourish that the dancer is proficient with are darts. That's it, because they changed the wording on how you can get the flourish as far as what kind of weapon attacks. And it can only be made with ranged weapon attacks. Well, ranged weapon attacks, I believe, with a finesse property is what they saying. Anyway, so because it's worded poorly, you actually can't use flourish, which is a defining ability of the class, because it's the defining ability of the rogue. Then they also have spellcasting. It's another defining feature because of that movement thing I talked about. And then finally, they have whirling steel, which basically allows you, if you spend time concentrating with finesse throwing weapons, you can have them come back to you, which is nice and it's cool. So that's really what the class is based around, and that's one of the things that causes it issues, because in order to get the benefit from flourish, you need to be attacking every turn, because you need to be getting your flourish or your sneak attack every turn. That's how you do your damage. In addition, you need to be building up your charges in order to use your other abilities. So this heavily emphasizes using the attack action. However, most spells are going to be actions as well. And so to use any of the spell casting, you have to not do a defining feature of the class. And then again, flourish is so limited in how it works that you have rather difficult times ever actually getting it to work. So, that being said, let's go into the Exotic Wonder. Now, the Exotic Wonder basically is the weapons-based subclass. The first subclass that we talked about, the Paragon, was the spellcasting subclass, and that one was a nightmare. The Peacebringer was effectively the healing subclass, and it was basically just a paladin. It gave them a bunch of paladin abilities, and actually the paladin abilities that they got, they could do better than a regular paladin, in addition to being a rogue and a spellcaster and all these other things. They also were an uber paladin, so it was just a nightmare. This one again is based around weapon attacks. So we'll see if this one, at least because weapon attacks will at least work with the flourish, we'll see if this one doesn't help out a little bit as far as just getting it to work. So first things first, at third level you get Flourishing Swing. Your melee weapon attacks with finesse weapons activates your flourish feature. So, because of that, this is the one class where using flourish, one of the defining features of the class, is actually possible. Because now, most of the weapons that they're proficient with can activate flourish instead of just darts. So, yeah, that's really, really nice. It does mean one of their defining features, the whirling steel, is not going to be useful for this as a subclass, because, again, it only allows them to use... well, technically, again, it says melee weapon attacks with finesse weapons. Finesse weapons, and they have defined the term melee weapon attack, meaning an attack with a melee weapon. Chakrams, which are just reskinned hand axes, so hand axes in this case, are a melee weapon with a thrown ability. You can make a ranged attack with the hand axe by throwing it, but it still counts as a melee weapon attack because it's an attack made with a melee weapon. It's a ranged attack made with a melee weapon, but it still counts as a melee weapon attack. So this Flourishing Swing actually fixes all the problems with flourish right at third level. So Exotic Wonder can actually use flourish pretty well. It does mean spellcasting becomes even less useful because now you actually have a way to use flourish, but we'll get to that a little later. The other thing that you get at third level is a fighting style. You actually get to choose a fighting style. And three of the fighting styles are ones we've seen before. Defense, you gain a +1 bonus to your AC. It's always useful. Dueling, when you're wielding a melee weapon in one hand and no weapon in the other, you get a +2 bonus to damage rolls with that weapon. That can be useful because the dancer was really kind of like the dancers in Final Fantasy 14 are dual wielders. They have two chakrams that they use. It feels a little bit weird to put dueling in there because that would mean you would only be using one instead of two. Can you do it? Absolutely. There's nothing stopping you. And because Flourish can only be activated once per turn, dual wielding doesn't really have a huge benefit like it does for other classes where their features and things like that can be activated on weapon attacks as opposed to just once per turn. So yeah, you can definitely go the dueling route. And again, because it says when you are wielding a melee weapon in one hand, it does mean that if you're using a chakram, which again they describe basically as a hand axe with the finesse property, if you're using a chakram, that means you can still technically make ranged attacks using the thrown property of it, but because it is a melee weapon, you would still get the +2 bonus to damage rolls with it. Because again, it's a melee weapon, so you're allowed to do that. And then the third one that we've already seen before is 2-weapon fighting. Basically, on your offhand attack, you can add your ability modifier to the damage rolls, which is always useful if you are going to be dual wielding. Now, the new one, or at least one that I don't personally recognize, it's possible that this has showed up other places, and I just don't recognize it, but I think this might be unique. It's called Fleetfoot, and it increases your movement speed by 5 feet. 5 feet's not a ton, especially since in order to cast spells with this class, it requires 10 feet, so it won't even allow you to keep your normal speed when you're casting a spell. If it's... now, again, this subclass is not meant to cast spells, but there are spells that you can cast that augment your melee abilities. So I would think Fleetfoot would make a lot more sense if it increased the speed by 10 feet, because that's the amount that you have to give up every time you cast a spell with verbal components and every time you concentrate on a spell. So if it was 10 foot, I could almost say that actually makes a lot of sense and could create a really interesting character because it would kind of base itself around doing sneak attack damage plus having a concentration spell that's helping it in some way. If we actually look at the spell list, come on, spell list, there we go. Dancer, Blue Maid Dancer, okay. So things like Hex. Hex is a useful spell because you get additional damage every time you hit. Blur is an unbelievably useful melee-based spell. I actually have a Blade Singer that I used it on in the Adventurers League. And literally what they would do is they would just cast Blur on themselves and they'd go up and just... I think the first adventure I took him on, he blurred himself and then went up and soloed, I think, 3 guys while the party took out one other guy. And they couldn't hit him because Blur makes all attacks against you have disadvantage. And with my Blade Singer, as long as Blade Dance was on, like they were just really, really hard to hit. They had a really high AC for the 3rd level character. All the enemies had disadvantage on all attack rolls against them. So it's really, really useful, and it could work really, really well. Magic Weapon is another one that could be really, really useful. Elemental Weapon at 3rd level could be really, really useful. So again, all of these are concentration spells that would be great, and if Fleet of Foot... if Fleet of Foot was 10 feet instead of 5 feet, it would kind of make sense of, okay, do you want to be kind of a magic augmented dancer? Then take Fleet of Foot. Do you want to be much more focused on just doing raw damage with weapons and magic weapons and things like that? Well, then go with dueling or 2-weapon fighting, things like that. So yeah, that's my one issue with the Fleet of Foot fighting style is just change it to 10 feet. It will not break anything to add an additional 5 feet to a class that's already hampered pretty badly by being forced to spend movement speed to cast spells. So yeah. At 6th level, you get double step. When you use the attack action, you may spend 1 Dazzling Dance to charge to make an extra melee weapon attack. This is interesting, to say the least. Because effectively, whenever you make the attack action, you gain a charge. With this, you can immediately burn that charge and effectively have extra attack with this class without giving them extra attack. I mean, that's effectively what double step does, is it's extra attack without giving them extra attack. Again, if it was a different class, that might actually be useful. Or if you were being that kind of magic augmented dancer where you're casting something like elemental weapon, being able to attack twice with a weapon that has elemental weapon, or if you have hex on them, and you're doing additional damage every time you hit them, then yeah, that actually makes pretty good sense. As far as taking an additional attack. However, with all the other things that you can do with your charges, and the fact that the big thing that's going to do most of your damage is going to be flourish, there really isn't a huge benefit to... Again, you would need to kind of build the class around having another attack being useful to you. Which could be done through magic items, which could be done through spells, which could be done through allies augmenting you with spells, but it would require the build to specifically be built around making multiple attacks. And at that point, it would probably be in your best interest to be dual wielding as well, just to be getting the most out of all the different attacks if you built it that way. But yeah. At 11th level, you get Flawless Flow. You may make a melee weapon attack as a bonus action after casting a spell. So this is weird, because again, Exotic Wonder is really built around making weapon attacks, and then this one goes, okay, well now we'll let you cast a spell and then make a melee weapon attack, so you're always making attacks. However, the issue that's going to be, you can get your flourish damage on that, so that's nice. You will not be able to get any... charges out of it, because getting one of those two charges requires you to take the attack action, not to make an attack. So it's a little bit weird. Again, if Fleet Foot was 10 feet instead of 5 feet, Flawless Flow would work really well. There's a lot of F's in that. Would work really, really well, because then you're basically at your base movement speed. You're able to effectively cast a spell just about every turn, which for a half caster is a little bit difficult. But again, once you get to 13th level and you get Bewildering Grace, you have a bunch of spells that you cast through that. So with that and that, this could turn into a much closer to a magical martial class, like an Eldritch Knight or a Blade Singer, where they're weaving magic and spells together. But yeah, like I said, for the idea that the Exotic Wonder is built around making weapon attacks, especially since Double Step requires you to take the attack action, Flawless Flow requires you to take the cast a spell action. So Double Step and Flawless Flow are mutually exclusive things, which is fine. But the fact that so many other abilities in the class are mutually exclusive with casting a spell, it's a weird thing to add in, and I would have much rather seen something else that augmented attacks, because there's already a spellcasting subclass for this that doesn't work. But that would be where I would put something like that instead of putting it into the weapon-based class. So yeah. Finally, you have Lamia Bite. You may spend 4 Dazzling Dance charges prior to making a weapon attack. Doing so increases the critical hit range of your attack rolls the remainder of the turn, lowering the threshold by 4. So effectively, you can crit on a 16 or higher. this one is really, really weird. Again, to build up 4 charges, either you have to cast a spell using Spell Dancer. You have to basically cast 2 spells of a 4th level or higher for 2 turns. So you cast a 4th level spell, a 4th level spell. And then you can use Lamia Bite and hopefully get a crit, which combining with your Flourish could be really, really powerful. But beyond that, like getting 4 Dazzling Dance charges just by, earning them the regular way that you earn them by just taking the attack action means you can't take Lamia Bite until the until the 5th round of combat minimum. And by that point, most of the creatures are going to be dead. Combat in 5th edition doesn't generally go too much beyond about, anywhere between like 5 to 7 rounds of combat. If you ever get to 10 rounds of combat in 5th edition, something has gone horribly wrong. So you're almost never going to be able to use Lamia Bite, and it's going to require tons of preparation to get to the point where you could use it. In addition to that, expanding the crit range that much is problematic, to be blunt. Yeah, it takes a ton to be able to get there. But if you combine it with other things, you're almost guaranteed a crit, especially if you can get advantage on the attack. Because this specifically increases the critical hit range of your attack rolls, not it sets them to a lower number like most other expansions to do. Like the champion fighter says you roll a critical hit on a 19 or a 20, where it specifically says a 19, not 1 lower. So something else expanded your crit range, which really doesn't happen in regular 5th edition. That's something that's almost unique to the 5th edition D&D cross Final Fantasy XIV classes and races compendium. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that critting in 5th edition is really, really, really powerful. Especially if you are one of the classes that excels at getting extra damage from critical hits. Barbarians, where they get to roll a bunch of extra dice when they crit. Rogues, where their sneak attack damage is doubled. They roll double the number of dice when they crit, and that's really powerful. And Paladins, where their crits they will add smites to, which will add just a boatload of dice to. So because of that, critical hits are actually really, really powerful in 5th edition, and increasing the range of your critical hits massively changes the balance, because you're effectively doubling the amount of damage a class can do in certain ranges, which is a significant thing. There, the hit point bloat that happened in 4th edition and the 3rd edition doesn't really happen in 5th edition. You don't have creatures with tons and tons and tons of hit points until you get to really, really high level creatures. Most creatures have around, even powerful creatures have around 100 to 200 hit points. And it isn't until you start dealing with things like Tarrasques and Tiamat, where you start getting, and ancient dragons, things like that, where you start getting upwards of 300 and 400 hit points. So because of that, critting and doing massive damage like that is more powerful in 5th edition than it has been in any previous edition, to be blunt. So yeah, like it's not a bad ability, but it is so expensive that you're almost never going to use it. And when you do use it, if you can plan it right, it's going to be game changing. So yeah, it's as strange as this sounds, it's it's both too powerful and too difficult to use. Normally, if you have a really powerful ability, one of the ways you balance it is make it very, very limited in its ability. Make it a one and done. Make it very difficult to pull off. This one is so difficult to pull off, and that you would think it balances out how powerful it is, but it's just, it feels bad both ways because it takes a ton of time to pull it off. And then if it does work out the exact way you want it to, it's going to unbalance the game. However, it's not going to feel good to pull it off because either you're not going to get your crit, which is going to suck, or you are going to get your crit, but it's at so far late in the game that everyone else has been doing much better damage than you, and it doesn't feel like it does anything for you. So, yeah, like I said, it's an interesting idea, but with how many other ways they've talked about they have to expand critical hit ranges in this one just feels a little bit lame and very difficult to pull off. So that was the base class. The revised class. Quick refresher on the revised classes defining features. We kept Dazzling Dance because those charges are really interesting and can do a lot of cool fun things. Got rid of Flourish. Changed Unarmored Defense to the Monk version instead of the Barbarian version. Just so you can't use a shield with it because it doesn't really make sense. Kibosh spellcasting. We kept Whirling Steel, so your thrown things come back to you. And then we added, I think it's called Closed Stance. I call it Dance Partner. Basically, as a bonus action, you can declare someone your dance partner for a minute. And what it does is anytime you burn a charge, they have advantage on the first attack they make against any enemy that you've made attacked that to the turn. We also added in extra attack at 5th level. So, that being said, how did I think to change the Exotic Wonder? Well, first things first, at 3rd level, we're going to just get rid of the fighting style because I don't really need it. So at 3rd level, Flourishing Swing is going to change to, as part of the attack action, you can spend a Dazzling Dance charge. I spelt it wrong in my little notes. I've started taking notes down now because someone suggested it in the Reddits, and as much as it is a lot more work for me, just because of how my brain and my disabilities will work, it made sense, and it has helped a little bit. Meaning I could spread out the work over multiple days instead of having to do all of it in a single day and hope that I could remember it long enough to do it. But anyway, so you can spend a Dazzling Dance to charge to allow your dance partner to spend their reaction and make an attack against an enemy you attacked during your turn. So basically, my idea for the Exotic Wonder, because we haven't really done one yet, is this subclass is going to focus on your dance partner and doing things with your dance partner. First thing it's going to be is basically being able to grant your dance partner an attack using their reaction. I talk about action economy all the time in 5th edition because it's so important in 5th edition. Whichever side has more actions that they can do, more specific things they can do, has an advantage in the fight. And using your reaction is a huge part of the action economy. If you can find a way to regularly use your reaction, you can get a lot more use out of your character. So this effectively means you're going to need to coordinate with your dance partner a little bit. Either having your dance partner always make sure your dance partner is within range of an enemy, so that you make your attack, and then as part of the attack action, you earn your charge, and then you can immediately burn it to get your dance partner to attack as well. And again, choosing your dance partner wisely, like choosing a rogue so that they can get an additional sneak attack in during a round is a good way to do that. Or really just choosing someone that's going to get the most benefit out of being able to make more attacks. Rangers are another ones that, because of their hunter's mark, they can get a lot of benefit out of being able to make extra attacks. So yeah, the whole thing about this class is really going to be working with your dance partner to make sure both of you are just maximizing your abilities, and that's where Flourishing Swing is going to kind of come in. At 6th level, you get, and I didn't name any of these, I just changed the mechanics, so I'm going to be using the same names they have here, and then Soren, if you use any of these suggestions, this would make it easier, or you can rename them to whatever makes sense. But for 6th level, when your dance partner makes an attack granted by Flourishing Swing, they can add your charisma modifier to their attack and damage rolls for that attack. So now, not only are they going to get extra damage with the attack, which is always nice, they're going to have a better chance to hit with the attack because they're adding your charisma modifier. And again, from a lore perspective, this is kind of the idea of if you do get to the point where you are basically in sync with someone in anything, you both start to get better at whatever it is that you're doing. I used to experience this when I was an actor. Especially if we were doing stage combat. When you and your combat partner were just in it, and it was both, you were just both into the fight, everything about the fight looked better, and you could see what was happening, and if weird things happened in the middle of the fight, you could adapt to it because you were just there with each other. I had one situation where I was doing West Side Story, and I was playing Bernardo, and the guy playing Riff, he had no idea how to do any sort of stage combat whatsoever. He couldn't do real combat either, but we didn't really care about that. We were more worried about the stage combat. And I had stage combat training. I'd had about 10 years of martial art, or I think 12 years of martial arts at that point as well. So the director was a student. It was a student-run production, and so I told the director, who was also the fight coordinator, I said, you know what, let me go ahead and choreograph this. And the first time he saw us do this, he actually took Noah, was the guy playing Riff. He took Noah aside and said, dude, stop hitting him. Because Noah didn't understand how to pull his punches and didn't understand how stage combat works. Where you actually, in theatrical stage combat, you actually very rarely get anywhere near hitting the person. Like a punch can be thrown about this far away and it looks real. If you get the nap right, which is the sound, like if someone was to punch me, their fist wouldn't come any closer than about this far away. But what I would do is, as the punch came up, I would come up like this. And so I would clap and, kind of go past, or, kind of go this and grab my face. And so it would sound like they were hitting me, when in fact they were nowhere near. And so he didn't quite understand that. And so he'd really hit me a few times. And we learned how to deal with it, and I worked with him. Eventually, Kika came up to him. I said, hey, Noah. And I went, boom, and I threw a punch, and I stopped it right here. Like, literally, less than like a centimeter from his nose. And his hair moved back a little bit because of the wind and everything. And he's like, whoa, and he moves back. He's like, what was that? I said, you notice how it didn't hit you? He goes, yeah. I said, that's what you do when we're fighting on stage. Is you don't hit me. If you hit me again, I'm not stopping next to the time. He learned very quickly. But we had been rehearsing for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And the director wanted to see how it had gone. And so we were just in the zone for this. And so we're doing it. And there was this one thing where he hit me, and we did it in a way where I would have my hand up. And what I would do is I would just open it up just a little bit, and I'd have my hand up here, open up a little bit, and he'd hit my hand right in front of my. So he never got close enough to actually hit me, but I'd have my hand out at the right place so he could hit my hand, and it would make this really great nap. So it'd be bam. And I went to the ground, and I get to the ground, I get on all fours as I get on the ground, and he comes over and he He comes over and he kicks me in the ribs, which knocks me up, kicks me on the ground, kicks me in the liver, and I roll towards the downstage. And so as he's doing this, he hits me and I go to the down. Hits me and I go, ugh! And he kicks me and I roll over. And the director comes over and he says, stop! You're kicking the shit out of him! And I get up and go, why are we stopping? He's like, Jody, are you okay? Said, yeah, I'm fine. But why? He's like, well, he really hit you. I said, no, he didn't. He's like, well, it looked like he did. I said, no! That's what it's supposed to do! So we were so into it that the audience, which were not at the right angles, because stage combat, you have to be at the right angle to not see that no one's getting hurt. So they weren't even at the right angles, but we were so into it and we were selling it so well that we we scared the director. So anyway, with this thing, that's kind of what I'm getting, where their involvement in it and your involvement in it is going to increase both of your abilities, or in this specific case, it's going to increase your partner's ability to do something. I didn't think it would make sense for both of them to get it, because then it would be too powerful, but this made perfect sense, so yeah. At 11th level, you get the following ability. As a bonus action, you can spend a charge to allow both you and your dance partner to move up to half your movement speed. This movement does not provoke opportunity attacks. This particular, specific ability is meant to be a repositioner so that you can get that additional attack. And I specifically made it to be. It just says that you and your dance partner can both move. Your dance partner doesn't have to use their reaction to do this movement. They just get free movement. So this particular ability can be massively useful to ensure that you're going to be able to get that additional attack from Flourishing Swing, because maybe you're both fighting someone and your attack takes them out. Well, you have extra attack at this point, so you have one more to attack. You can use your bonus action in between attacks to get both of you to move to the next guy, hit him, activate the Flourishing Swing attack if you have enough charges built up, and then you both still get that. And if you do have to miss out on the Flourishing charge, being able to just give your dance partner the ability to reposition themselves however they want without having to worry about opportunity attacks can be massively useful in a bunch of different situations. So yeah, repositioning your allies on the battlefield is always useful. Finally, the 15th level ability. As a bonus action, you and your dance partner become in perfect sync for 1 minute. When you activate this ability, and as a bonus action on subsequent terms, you can switch places with your dance partner as long as they're within 60 feet of you. In addition, while in sync and within 60 feet of each other, any attacks or abilities you or your dance partner make can originate from either your space or your dance partner's space. You can use this ability twice, gaining back all uses after a short or long rest. So, the in sync ability. This ability is really meant to do something, again, that doesn't exist in 5th edition. Now, there are kind of similar things where, like the Trickster Cleric, they can cast spells from either their position or their doubles position, or wizards with familiars can cast from their familiar's position. So there's something kind of similar to that, but there's nothing that allows you to use an ally's position as your own, meaning you can make attacks as if you were standing in their position, and they can make attacks as if they were standing in yours. Also, I say any actions. So theoretically, anything. If you make your dance partner a wizard, they can cast touch-based spells from your place. And you can just switch positions whenever you want. It's an ability that is really unique, and because of that, it's going to sound a little bit underpowered, just because you really have to understand yourself and your dance partner's class really well to get the most benefit out of it. But in situations where you do know both classes, and you're able to just use them really, really well, you can pull off some really, really powerful combos and things like that to just do crazy inventive things. So yeah, overall, that is my modification or revamp of the Exotic Wonder. Like I said, I wanted it to be well. Final thoughts. Overall, the Exotic Wonder, the base class, is probably the best designed of the base subclasses, because for the most part, it works somewhat well with the base class itself. It allows you to build up dazzling dance charges. It actually allows you to use Flourish with more weapons than just the darts. Double step is an interesting way to add the extra attack option. And then Flawless Flow seems really out of place, but kind of works. And then Lamia's Bite, again, is both overpowered and useless at the same time. Yeah, I mean, compared to the other two classes, this is miles ahead as far as something that actually works, because a lot of what it does actually does synergize well with the rest of the subclass and with the base class itself. Going to the revised version and the revised Dancer, I really like the Exotic Wonder. I think ever since I pitched the idea of using a dance partner thing, I thought Exotic Wonder could be really, really fun. Having a subclass that's entirely based on that dance partner mechanic could be really interesting and fun. I think all of the revised subclasses are pretty interesting and fun, and I think the revised dancer itself is a really interesting, fun subclass. So, yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, that's going to be all for me today. As always, like, subscribe, turn notifications on in the comments down below. We have now seen the base class and all three subclasses. Which one is your favorite? And you are able to choose either base subclasses or the revised subclasses or whatever. Let me know in the comments down below. Do you like the original version of the dancer and you think it just needs some tweaking to make it work better? Do you like the revised version? Do you think one of the base classes would work better with the revised subclass? Or do you think one of the revised subclasses will work better with the base? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, that is all for me today, and I will see you guys in the next time. All right? Bye-bye.